James?
So I host a show on the Amy Newman channel. We do at least 3 to 4 open mics every week. We do shows. We invite believers to come on, tell us why they believe, and we let them come on and make their case. And I was born and raised as a Christian, but in 2014, I gave my life over to reason and evidence, and I became an atheist. So in terms of evidence for evolution, one of the first things I want to point out, and I know Kent will be happy about this, is evidence from homology. We have here Haeckel's drawings of embryos, and we see the similarities between all the different embryos of various species. And there are differences, okay, but there are more similarities than differences. And there's no rational reason this should be if these were separate, distinct, created kinds, but it makes all the sense in the world if they evolved over millions of years. And you can even see in these embryos, as Kent is well acquainted with, the gill slits. And they are gill slits, by the way. Of course, they don't turn into gills in humans, but that's how evolution works. Evolution takes a base material and it can do different things with it. Evolution takes the same basic material and it could create a male reproductive system or a female reproductive system or something in between, as does sometimes happen. Nice of God to design it that way, right? There's no reason to think that dolphins, if you look on their embryos, their blowhole is actually at the front of their nose, but it migrates to the top of their head as time goes on. And Haeckel did not fake his drawings. That is a charge made without evidence. These are works of art. Haeckel was an artist. And of course, in any art, there is some level of artistic license. But I would caution Kent about breaching the 9th commandment in claiming that this man, Ernest Haeckel, was convicted of fraud, unless he has evidence that he was convicted of fraud. Because the evidence we have is that he was a distinguished professor of biology or zoology and anatomy for 30 years after he made his drawings. Now, he didn't know as much as we know today about evolution, so he got some of the details wrong. But then they came in and they tried to take photographs of these embryos and make them look much different than they actually are, because if you knew how similar they are, you might just conclude that maybe they're related to each other. Or maybe God designed it that way and intentionally made it look like they were related to deceive people. Because God does say in the Bible that he's going to send people delusion. He is going to mislead people so that he can then punish them for falling for his delusion.
All right. Well, thank you so much for doing this, James. It sounds like you're a Aaron Rod disciple, and you're reading script straight from his website. I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounded awful familiar. I've seen it before. And I appreciate the analogy you gave. That's classic. The metric system versus the American English standard system. Our system's confusing. Weights, measures, lengths, you got to convert everything. Metric system is much easier. You said the metric system was designed top down. I agree. You said the English system evolved randomly, and it's chaos. Good observation. James, think about it, okay? I think all of nature is designed and all fits together pretty good. The animals breathe in the oxygen, give off CO2. The plants breathe in CO2 and give off oxygen. You'd almost think it was designed top down if you didn't know better. But anyway, thank you. I'll use that example. I like that. Okay. You brought up quite a few points from Mr. Nelson's site that I would like to answer. You claim Haeckel's drawings are accurate. You are mistaken, okay? Or somebody lied to you. The textbooks, and I've got a whole rack of them here, show that the baby growing in the mother has gills like a fish. They're not gill slits. They're not even slits. They're folds of skin. I got the same in my elbow, okay? I can't breathe through them. I got some under my neck. Fat folks got a lot of them in their neck, okay? This is a lie I cover in my video number 4. They are not gill slits, and it's not evidence for evolution. But the purpose of this debate tonight is for you to provide evidence for evolution. Is that a reasonable theory to see that the embryos of these different animals have folds under their skin, under their chin? Therefore, they're related. That's the evidence that you presented. I'm gonna counter that, okay? Evidence from development, the textbook says. What do they mean? The similarity between early stages in development of many different animals helped convince Darwin that all forms of life shared common ancestor. Ernst Haeckel drew the drawings, and they are fake, and he admitted it on trial with his other professors, okay? Darwin considered this embryology thing you brought up, by far the strongest single class of facts in favor of his theory. Haeckel, who faked that he was a good artist and a good liar, he faked it. Tell him I said so, okay? Haeckel called it the biogenetic law. Haeckel made up the phrase ontogeny, that's the way the baby grows inside the mother, recapitulates or reenacts or goes through again, phylogeny, the way things evolved. Fancy phrase, meaningless, okay? The presence of fish-like structures in these embryos. Wow. As if an embryo retains a memory of its origins and starts to copy them during its development. This is what is taught, and this is absolutely a lie. This idea that sick mind Freud came up with was ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, that the individual recapitulates the evolution of the entire species. That's why this big debate's going on now. Were they having the debate about abortion up till the baby's 28 days old? The law they almost voted on it today. Give the mother the option to kill the baby until it's 28 days old. Well, if it's just going through fish, amphibian, reptile, mammal stage, it's not a human yet. It's just a fish. It's okay to kill it. That's the logic behind abortion, okay? They're lying. Those are not gills like a fish. This is lie number 12. 4 branchial arches, supposedly gill slits. They develop into bones in the ear, glands in the throat. They have nothing to do with breathing ever. They are lying to you. Those are not gill slits. This fellow's got 5 or 6 folds under his chin. Hillary had a bunch. She couldn't breathe through any of them. She couldn't think with anything either, okay? Haeckel said the turning point in his thinking was when he read Charles Darwin's book. So these two guys influenced each other. Darwin said, boy, I wish we had evidence for my theory. Haeckel said, I'll make you some. I teach embryology. So he faked some drawings for him. By 1868, many evolutionists were worried about the lack of evidence for Darwin's theory. Haeckel, one of the worried evolutionists, decided to manufacture some. The fraud began with his family tree. And James, you and Aaron all believe in this family tree, that everything is related and goes back to an amoeba. It's an orchard. There's a tree of frogs, and there's a tree of bananas, and there's a tree of camels. And they don't go back to a common ancestor. Yes, there are family trees, thousands of them, but they're not connected. The fact that we see 1,100 varieties of apples now does not prove apples are related to whales. You guys are completely insane to believe such a thing. Haeckel became worried about the large gap between non-living and living. Yeah, you ought to be. So he invented one. It's called the Monera. You can look it up. He lied, okay? To have a complete chart, Haeckel decided to create a series of organisms. He called them Monera. 1869, he claimed to have discovered these organisms in ocean mud samples. He named them Bathybius haeckeli in honor of Haeckel. 1875, John Buchanan revealed Huxley, I've been saying Haeckel, Huxley. His discovery was simply calcium sulfate from seawater. Haeckel refused to admit his fraud and reprinted the Monera in the drawing of his book, The History of Creation. I think I've got that one in here. Judy, have you seen that one? Organizing the Library. History of Creation, okay? His fraud continued with his attempt to prove the only difference between man and ape is that man can speak. That's the only difference. He could see. Go to a zoo. He fraudulently created a missing link called Pithecanthropus alalis, the speechless ape man. He went so far as to have artist Gabriel Marx draw the made-up creature. He lied, okay? Haeckel reached an all-time low when he began presenting his biogenetic law, known as the law of recapitulation. He taught that each animal retraces the stages of evolution in its embryonic development. He drew a dog embryo at 4 weeks. This is his drawing that you said he was a great artist. This is the human embryo at 4 weeks. I'm sorry, there's the actual, what they really look like. Here's his drawings. He's either a lousy artist or he's a liar. Those are not even similar to what they actually, he faked them to make them look alike. Here's the charts that you said is evidence for evolution. I'm sorry, you are mistaken. Are we still recording? Okay. On top are Haeckel's drawings, underneath are actual photographs. He is a lousy artist or he's a really convincing liar. But to have you present that as evidence 60 years after it's proven wrong, it proves how convincing it was. And Mr. Nelson still thinks it's evidence for evolution. The gill slits. He was tried at the Jena University court. He was convicted and he confessed. A small percentage of my drawings are forgeries. Those, namely, for which the observed material is so incomplete or insufficient as to fill in and to reconstruct the missing links by hypothesis and comparative synthesis. Hovind translation. I didn't have any evidence, so I made up what I wanted it to say. I made it what I wanted it to look like. That's what that means in English. He said, I should feel utterly condemned were it not that hundreds of the best observers and biologists lie under the same charge. So in 1875, he admitted it was a fraud. 145 years later, you are still believing it. James, get up to speed, okay? Despite its status as a fake, Darwin continued to use this biogenetic law as the most important evidence of common descent. They would ask Darwin, what's the best evidence you've got? Oh, look at the embryos, look at these drawings, look at this chart. And people go, oh, wow, it must be true. You use the same thing tonight, James. I want the listeners to this channel to understand you either don't know what you're talking about or you're lying because you're presenting evidence that is false. It's not true. Stop using that. The whole purpose of this debate series, where's the evidence for evolution? That's not evidence. Human embryo at the very early period can hardly be distinguished from that of other members of the vertebrate kingdom, Darwin said. All these frauds brought to public in a 1911 book called Haeckel's Frauds and Forgeries. So for over 110 years, it's been known he lied and published about it. Few people know the pictures were fakes. The deceit was exposed by Haeckel's Frauds and Forgeries, a book by Asmuth and Hull. They quoted 19 leading authorities. Anatomist Keeble of Freiburg University said, it clearly appears that Haeckel has in many cases freely invented embryos or reproduced from illustrations given by others in a substantially changed form. Zoologist at Basel University said, it's a sin against scientific truthfulness. I agree. Now listen, I love science. Science is what we know. Knowledge gained by observation, experimentation, testing, demonstration. I love science. Evolution is not part of science. It's a religious worldview. You guys believe it on faith completely. Nobody's ever seen a cow produce a non-cow or a dog produce a non-dog or an amoeba produce a non-amoeba. It's not science. It's a religious belief you have, these stupid family trees. During early exposure, Western educators continued to use Haeckel's pictures for decades as proof of the theory of evolution. The matter's been settled with finality. Dr. Michael Richardson, an embryologist at St. George Medical School, London, he found there was no record that anyone actually ever checked Haeckel's claims by systematically comparing human and other fetuses during development. Let's check it out. Isn't that what science is supposed to do? Anybody can make a claim. Okay, check it. That's what peer review is all about. Okay, here's one of his peers, who's an embryologist, reviewing it. He assembled a scientific team that did that, photographing the growing embryos of 39 different species. In 1997, interview London's The Times, Richardson said, this is one of the worst cases of scientific fraud. It's shocking to find that somebody one thought was a great scientist was deliberately misleading. It makes me angry. What Haeckel did was take a human embryo and copy it, pretending that the salamander and the pig and all the others look the same at the same stage. They don't, they are fakes. Check it out. London, The Times from London, what's that, 30 years ago, 25 years ago. When we see at a certain stage the embryos of a man and the ape and the dog and the rabbit, the pig, the sheep, though recognizable as higher vertebrates, you can tell it's got a backbone, cannot be distinguished from each other. The fact can only be elucidated by assuming a common parentage. Haeckel's still teaching it himself 30 years after he was proven to be a liar. There's Haeckel's drawings. There's the actual photographs by Richardson, who teaches embryology. He lied. Stop using that as evidence for evolution. Tear it out of all the textbooks. You teachers, go to your school board and say, folks, we got a textbook on page 87 here that says this information, and this has been proven wrong for 100 years. Can we tear this page out, please? Come on, don't you want the textbooks to be accurate? Is that all you've got? I'm wound up tonight, man. Thank you, Matt. The biogenetic law as a proof for evolution is valueless. That's 60, 70 years ago they knew that, okay? Biogenetic law has become so deeply rooted in biological thought, it cannot be weeded out, in spite of having been demonstrated to be wrong by numerous scholars. Science Magazine, 1969, a peer-reviewed journal. Surely the biogenetic law is as dead as a doornail, American scientist, 35 years ago. A set of 19th century drawings still appear in reference books, are badly misdrawn, said the embryologist in Britain. Haeckel confessed to drawing from memory, was convicted of fraud at the University of Jena, and the drawings persist. St. George Medical School in London, 1997. Here's Haeckel's fake drawings used at universities all over the place, still using them. University of North Dakota, when I was there preaching, they still use Haeckel's drawings. There's an excellent book about the gill slits. Haeckel he faked Darwin's book came out 1859. He said, we should find evidence for my theory. Haeckel faked the drawings 10 years later. 6 years after that, 6 professors proved he was wrong. He lied. Okay? It should have been over. Stop. Go look for more. If you want to believe in evolution, that's fine. But don't use false evidence to tell other people it's true. Where's the evidence? Those are not gill pouches. Holt biology teaches it. Glencoe biology teaches it. These are lying. Tim Barra still teaching it 115 years after it's proven wrong. Kenneth Miller, the Catholic biology teacher in Rhode Island, still teaching it, wrote it in his book. Kenneth Miller says evolution's as much a fact as gravity. Kenneth, I'll debate you anytime. Bring it on, Catholic and all. Wear your rosary thing. Doesn't matter. I'll take you on. You're wrong. These are not gill slits.
1 minute.
1 minute. Presence of gill slits and tails is the early stage of vertebrate embryos, supports evidence from the fossil record. Those are not gill slits. They're lying. This is in books all over the place. All I've ever said is I'm not trying to get creation in the schools. I want the schools to be accurate. I'm going for honesty. Stop using this lie as evidence for evolution. It's all over the place. I got hundreds of textbooks here. I believe science class should teach science. It is not science that the embryos are related. That was only 1 point, James. I got a whole list here. This debate's going to go all night. Bring it on. Your turn.
Important debate on, is evolution a reasonable scientific theory? This is our